Hello, lovers. Welcome back to another For the Marriage video. I am Lacone Hanson, a marriage coach just out here trying to help bring the divorce rate down. If this is your first time to this channel here, one, welcome. Two, make sure you find the subscribe button below and click it. Our mission for the Marriage is to provide resources, services, and products that help marriages reconnect, thrive, and build fulfilling marriages worth having. So if you are looking for a positive marriage community, this is the spot for you, so make sure you subscribe. Three, thank you so much for joining us in this video. For my old lovers, you know it's always a pleasure to have you back here with me. I got a good video for us today, so let's go ahead and get into it. So I wanted to do this topic, do we as spouses make our marriage difficult? I wanted to do this topic because I think it's important for us to recognize some of the things that we do in our marriages that make it harder, right? And if we can recognize those in ourselves, from this moment on, we can work towards fixing those things to make our marriage worth having, right? Building a fulfilling marriage is something that we want to do, right? You don't want to be empty in your marriage. So if we can work on the things that are causing us to have difficult moments and difficult times in our marriage, then that could definitely help us. So in this video, I'm going to share 4 things that we do or don't do as spouses that make our marriage a little bit more difficult. So let's go ahead and get into it. Number 1 is going to be poor communication. Now, we all know, especially because we're adults, we know that communication is key in every relationship. Whether you are a parent, whether you are a sibling, whether you are someone's child, right? Whether you are a worker, you know that you have to communicate, especially if you are someone's spouse. Now, if we are communicating with our spouses, it's always a plus, right? And I look at marriage like this. Obviously, we have our beginning stages, we're in the middle, and then we have that old love, right? And we all want to get to that old love. You know, those people who have been married for so long and they still look at their spouses like, dang, I just love you, right? So that's where I want us to get those 3 stages, and I want those 3 stages to be fulfilling. But if we are in that beginning stage, we are typically, you know, those newlyweds, we are typically over communicating, which is so good, right? We over communicate because we are happy. This is a new territory for us. You know what I mean? We want to share everything with our spouse. But as we start working to that middle stage of marriage, we start to see that like life is happening. We're just communicating on the go. Like we might send a text, we might talk to them over the phone really quick, you know, but communication is not strong because life is happening. Our lives are busy and we just like, you know what, we're going to get the information when we get the information, but we got to go. But that's not how we operate or how we should operate in our marriage. We need to understand that our spouse should get the best communication that we give out there, right? So if we are communicating with our boss, we know we want that check. So we're going to over communicate, but no, we need to be over communicating with our spouse at all costs all the time. So poor communication is number one reason why we make our marriages difficult. So if you can work on that, or you know that you don't communicate with your spouse well, just make sure you start to work on those things, okay? Number two is going to be avoiding conflict. Now, I said in the beginning that newlyweds, they over communicate, but newlyweds also are some of the ones who avoid the most conflict because they are newly married. They don't really want to be dealing with these difficult things in marriage. They're just trying to enjoy this marriage, this new territory that they're in with this person that they love. So when a conflict come up, they're sweeping it under the rug. And where you may see that start to come out is in that middle stage, or as you start to approach the middle stage of marriage, where there's been so many things swept under the rug that you just turned a blind eye to, that you did not address, that starts to come out. out. And what it does, it creates some type of resentment. And to me, resentment is like the silent killer of marriages, right? When you have this resentment, when you start to look at your spouse in a way just of disgust, and you have hatred, and you're not feeling connected with your spouse, to me, that is all resentment. So it's very important for us to work through conflict as it comes. Now, I know people out there on social media say, we don't never argue, we don't never disagree. We just have this beautiful marriage. Sometimes I really do want to call BS on that, because that is one of those adjustment phases in marriage, which we just talked about last week about. We do have those adjustment periods in marriage throughout, through the beginning, the middle, and that loving old love stage, right? There are going to be some adjustment periods, which means there's going to be times when you're not going to see eye to eye, when you're going to disagree, when their arguments are going to be high. That's okay. It's okay for us to have those arguments, because it builds texture and character to our marriage, right? When we can look back and be like, man, that was a pretty bad argument, but look where we're at right here, right? So it's very important for you all to go through conflict as it approaches you, right? Address it as it approaches you. Conflict is one of those things that if we do not address, we end up making our marriage a lot more difficult than what it needs to be. Number three. Now, number three is a really, 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 really big thing. And this can be at any stage of marriage, right? Having unrealistic expectations of your spouse, right? Or a situation that your spouse is involved in, or that you both are involved in, right? We as humans, we just expect certain things. If you hold any type of title, if you are a brother, right, you are expected to be a protector. If you are a husband, you are expected to be a provider and a protector, right? If you are a wife, you are expected to probably clean and do, take care of the kids, be a nurturer, right? But at the end of the day, sometimes those expectations are unrealistic for that person. So when you start to expect that your spouse should be doing certain things, and there has not been a conversation to address what we are supposed to be doing as husband and wife, or what our roles are, or as my husband, I expect you to do this, and as my wife, I expect you to do that. But at the end of the day, if those conversations aren't happening and you have these unrealistic expectations, it's going to go back down to conflict, and then poor communication, right? Or poor communication and then conflict. So the biggest thing is if you start to find yourself having these expectations, then you need to address them, right? So we just had a conversation, my husband and I, about my brakes. And I was like, you're supposed to be taking care of that thing. He was like, I don't drive your car, so how am I supposed to know? I'm just like, you know what? That was me expecting him. You are the man. You should know that my brakes off the chain right now, right? But he doesn't drive my car. So we had that conversation, and it is a reality check. Like, wow, like maybe if I would have told him, hey babe, I think my brakes are a little bit, or acting a little bit funny, I don't know if it's my brakes or it's something else, then he can get in the car and drive it and be like, okay, yeah, there is something wrong. Let me go ahead and take it in. But if I just expect that he should know these things, then it is one of those things. It's like, well, why are you getting mad at me when I didn't know that this was happening, right? And I didn't get mad at him. It was literally just a joke. I was like, hey, you supposed to, you the man, because I am very like old traditional, like I cook, I clean, but at the end of the day, like, how is he supposed to know if I don't address him with this situation? So it's very important for us to not have these unrealistic expectations of our spouse just because they hold a title that is our spouse or our husband or our wife or whatever the case may be. So it's very important for us to not have unrealistic expectations unless we have addressed that, hey, I expect you to be this way. Okay, I expect you to be this way. Okay, we both agree. Okay, let's move forward. So that is number 3, unrealistic expectation. Number 4. Number 4 is one of those things that I'm telling you all, we cannot do. We cannot tolerate number 4, right? We cannot neglect our spouse. We have to. We have to. I'm expecting you to, okay? We have to be there for our spouses. We need to show up for our spouses. Like, we have to be present in our marriage. We cannot at any cost neglect our spouse. It's so important for us to prioritize our marriage, be intentional in our marriage, show up for our spouse, let our spouse know, like, you still the person that I rock with. Let our spouses know that they are still the person that you rock with on a day-to-day basis, all day, no matter what. Like, I'm your ride or die. We Bonnie and Clyde now here, right? It's so important for us not to neglect our spouse, because this is what is going to make our marriage most difficult. When you neglect your spouse, you obviously don't have communication, right? You are not being affectionate. You're not showing attention. Your spouse is not feeling wanted by you. Your spouse is not feeling supported by you. And that is probably the nastiest feeling that one could probably feel, is to be like, dang, my spouse don't even care about me, don't care what I'm doing. If a spouse feels neglected, it can really ruin your marriage. So it's very important for us to know that we have to be intentional and we have to prioritize our marriage. And honestly, y'all, I'm going to put this shameless plug in here about this love bag, this mystery love bag, because when I was creating the mystery love bag, I end up creating it because I know that there's a lot of marriages out there that are not being intentional in their marriage, and they're not prioritizing their marriage. And what I wanted for the mystery love bag, so if you haven't gotten one, go in the description box below. The link will be down there. But if you haven't gotten one, you should, because this is going to help you be intentional. When this arrives at your doorstep or your mailbox each month, it's going to remind you to be intentional, right? It's going to remind you to prioritize your marriage, even if it's just something that you do in your living room. Like, it is built for that. And I think that one of the hardest things that people realize when they finally get divorced is like, man, I could have did better as a spouse, right? Even if that person was telling you, like, I need this, I need that, you could have done better, but you just chose neglect. And what happens when you neglect things, right? They get malnutrition, they're not active, like, they get weak, right? They get fed up, like, and it ultimately could pass away, because neglect is one of those things that should not be in a marriage, right? You stood at the altar, you stood in that courtroom, you stood on the beach, you stood in your parents' backyard, you stood somewhere face to face with your spouse, and whatever your vows were, the ultimate thing was in there, that you was not going to neglect them. And even though your vows was like, I'm not going to neglect you, everything that you vowed that you would do said otherwise, right? It didn't say, well, everything that you vowed that you would do had nothing to do with neglecting. So do not neglect your spouse. Hopefully somebody got something out of this video. I think it's very, very important for us to understand that these 4 things are the things that are causing our marriages to be difficult, right? So you have poor communication, you have avoiding conflict, you have unrealistic expectations, and then you have that nasty, nasty one, which is neglecting your spouse. Let's make sure we are working towards building a marriage that is fulfilling. It's important for us to do that. We owe it to not only ourselves, but to our spouse and the children that, if you do have, or the children that you want in the future. Again, my mystery love bag is out there on sale. I have the link in the description box below. Go ahead and pick up September's mystery love bag. October is already out there for sale, so you can go ahead and buy October as well. It won't ship out until the October timeframe. Hopefully you lovers got something out of this video. Again, please don't hesitate to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and always come back for some more For the Marriage video. Until next time, make sure you do marriage right.